Teachers of Reddit, who's the most clever cheater you ever saw? Not a teacher, but a kid in my class plagiarized his entire area research paper, 10-ish pages. He found one online and copied it word for word. We had to submit it to this plagiarizing checking website, so in order to avoid detection he changed all of the letter I to the Russian character I, as it is almost identical, and just looking at them you can't tell the difference. So he passed the plagiarism test. No one knew until like a year later when he bragged about it. That website we used was notified about this cheat, and they changed the algorithm or whatever so it wouldn't happen again. How about this one? My computer science professor had a number of programming assignments for us. We were not supposed to share code. Professor announced that he had a special cheat detector program that he'd run on turned-in assignments. He went on about how it could tell if you just changed variable names or reordered a few statements. My friends and I spent hours trying to think how to defeat the CDP. Which meant we had to deduce how it might work. Which meant we were thinking about algorithms and data structures on our own time. Professor C, you evil manipulative smug bastard, I salute you. Not a teacher, but my high school health class had a system for cheating, because our coach didn't give a single duck. My school had mandatory health class, everyone hated it, and it was basically a pointless say no to drugs class. Our teacher cared just about as much as we did, to the point that he took out his hearing aids anytime he wasn't lecturing, and we all figured out that he couldn't hear high-pitched voices if you sat in the back. So, my class developed a system during tests. If Coach C took out his hearing aids, then one of the spotters in the first row would tap a rhythm onto the desk. Then what was basically the council of kids that knew what the duck they were doing, all sitting in the back row, would figure out the answers, get them to the girl with the highest pitched voice, also in the back row, and she would quietly announce them. I'm all but positive that Coach C knew what we were doing and just didn't care, and that's why he was the best. In calculus class my senior year we had our midterm coming up, and our teacher had to be away, so the test was administered by a sub. Perfect opportunity. The whole class got together and designed a t-shirt that had all the equations written on the front in a way that looked like it was just some nerd lingo trying to be funny. Think about writing a sentence using math symbols as letters. We all wore the same shirt, and told the sub it was because we were all in math club and had a competition that afternoon and it was our uniform. Teacher got back and had no idea how the class average went from 70s on all our other tests to upper 90s. And not a single goody two-shoes snitched on everyone. In high school no one snitches, cause then you're seen as an asshole. Except that one kid who was homeschooled until 5th grade and always asks the teacher if there's homework that day. And he's a total bitch and everyone hates him because he breathes through his ducking mouth so goddamn loud. With your stupid high-pitched ducking voice that sounded like screaming from across the building even if you were whispering. God, I ducking hated that kid. I wonder if my 10th grade history professor is a Redditor? Well, Mr. Homer, remember how you let us roll the dice the day before a big quiz to determine if we got to use a cheat sheet on the test? Well, the reason the class always let me roll was because I had loaded dice I would switch out while you weren't looking. Not a teacher, but I'm going to tell my story anyways. In 9th grade, we had an English test that no one studied for. The day of, the teacher was sick. She had written instructions on the board. You may not use your phone, neighbor, or book. I erased the word not, as a funny, stupid joke, thinking the sub would say, that's not right, and tell us not to use our phone, neighbor, or book. The sub walked through the door, and it was Mrs. White. So Mrs. White is a contender for oldest woman to ever live. She is completely clueless. You could tell her that school ended at 10 AM today, and she would pack up and go home. She handed out our tests, read the instructions on the board, and said get to work. No one questioned it. We discussed and googled every question. It would have been more clever if it was planned, but it worked out well. Not a teacher, but I saw another student use it. He engraved the equations into the pencil without breaking through the paint. Unless you were up close, you'd never notice anything wrong with it. Edit. Apparently like 6 other YouTubers have mentioned this. As far as I know, This person is not a YouTuber. He's more likely to be in prison. We had really dark brown desks in my school. If you wrote on them in pencil you could only really see it if the light hit the graphite at the right angle, so I would just write Spanish translations on my desk in pencil before a test. I did this too, but my biology teacher didn't speak Spanish, so it didn't help me on the final. In keyboard harmony class, one student thought he was fooling me on a test by using a MIDI playback of another student's performance. He moved his fingers over the keyboard pretending that he was actually doing the playing, thinking that I wouldn't suspect since I was sitting in the front of the room listening. Unfortunately for him, I recognized the other students playing immediately, sight unseen. Not a teacher, but a TA for calculus. I taught a recitation and gave quizzes during it. I normally didn't walk around, but would sit at this elevated desk and sort of watch people. Since calculators weren't even allowed, I wasn't too worried. About the fourth quiz of the semester, I caught a student cheating by having his notes on a small piece of paper and hiding it under his quiz while taking it. What was clever about it was he always sat behind this very overweight girl on quiz days, and by doing so my view of him and his desk were completely obstructed by her. Maths. I proctor a test on weekends. We recently moved the test site to a new location where it's virtually impossible for the people taking it to see each other's papers, but before this, they would double up at long tables, and we had to be very vigilant about wandering eyes. At the old site, there was one guy who thought he was fooling me with his quick head turns, his fake stretching, and his big yawns that he'd used to steal a glance at his desk mate's paper. Normally, I would have shut that down hard, but this time, I decided to let it go. Why? Well, this test has two versions. One is the version that you'd send to universities and colleges, and the other is what you would send to a current or prospective employer to show your proficiency in this area. These tests are completely, 100% different. Not one single question is the same between them. The cheater failed to notice that his desk mate was taking the other version of the test. I wonder if he ever found out why he completely bombed the test, or if he thought the guy he was cheating from was just really dumb. When I was in junior history, there was this group of 4 bros that sat in the back and were, let's just say, not the most stellar of students. Our teacher suspected them of cheating, so he made 4 different versions of the test. All 4 of them had the same answers. Our teacher ratted them out to the entire class, lol. Don't think it would be very clever if the teachers were aware of it. As a former high school student, I'll share my clever way of cheating. We were required to take 4 state tests a year. All these tests were just reprints of actual tests from a few years ago. I knew the answer key would be online, but all I had to do was find out which year it was. So we had 2 days to complete this test in class. Day 1. Math, Science, English, History. Teacher handed out the test, and literally on the front page was the year this test took place. I went through each test and made mental notes of the questions and order they were in, just to confirm nothing changed on the answer key. So I'd get home and Google each test, and bam. Each answer key is there. Now, in all my classes except for one, I was right next to the teachers, so I had to conjure up a sneaky way to copy down the right answers. So what I did was, I went to Walmart and picked up brand new wooden pencils and colored erasers. I color coded each pencil with a different color to differentiate them. On the answer key it was ABCD, so with a razor blade I engraved different marks for each key. Example, A equals slash, B equals vertical slash, C equals minus, D equals backslash. There was about 100 questions, and I managed to fit all the answers on 2 sides of the pencil. So if the teacher got up to walk around, all I had to do was rotate the pencil away from him/her. Every 10 questions I would engrave a circle, so that if I ever lost count I could count by tens. Day 2, all I had to do was circle the correct answer, and obviously I purposely missed at least 4. Totally worked because this was a major grade and I barely passed math because of this method. I would like to add, I could have easily studied and passed, but me being the rebel teenager that I was, I wanted to show no mercy. Edit, I forgot to mention, I sold each pencil to a friend for $5. I made $10 that day, totally worth it. Not a teacher, but I was a student in Spanish class, and one of my classmates had some index cards under his sleeves. He was slick about it. He finished the test first, but didn't think twice about the cards being under his sleeves, so he stood up and they all fell, and he got caught. It was the most hilarious thing that ever happened in that class. I couldn't stop laughing at him, so I got kicked out and had to retake the test after school. Lol. One of my Spanish teachers in high school was pretty clueless. She would always stand in the hallway between class times. One day she had the answer sheet to a test on her desk, and someone wrote all the answers on the whiteboard. After the test they just got up and erased them. The teacher never noticed. I was a cheater. Usually I would finish all the questions I knew and memorize the questions I didn't know while I was waiting for class to finish. I told the teacher I didn't finish and asked for extra time, and said I was only available the next day. I went home and memorized the answers and came back and aced the test. Another time I gnawed my lip and stored the blood in my mouth. Then fake coughed and spat the blood on my test and went to the clinic. I got a few extra days to study for that test. You're a ducking metal cheater. Biting your lip and then coughing up the blood from it onto your paper? Metal bruh. When I was in high school, I was way ahead in math. We were allowed to use graphing calculators, and I finished early enough that I typed all the answers in my TI-83 and turned my test in. For the first student I helped, I held the calculator up just right, so the person behind me could read the answers, and just hit random arrow keys so the teacher would think I was playing a game. I played Tetris and that spaceship game a lot. I then asked to go to the bathroom and dropped the calculator at another desk, came back and moved it to another. I had forgot I did this until the start of the next school year's math class when I found them still on the screen when I started the calculator again. Not a teacher, but a fellow college student printed out his own label for the drink he normally brought to class, like vitamin water or something, with notes for the test we were taking in the ingredients section. This is why we can't have labels on our bottles in my college. Oh, I have a story for you. See, our senior year of high school, the teacher had set up a website to administer a test and sent the grade along with the right answers back to the email of the teacher. If you looked at the HTML, you would see it. So we were sneaky and ran the HTML with the email changed to ours, and bam, no problem. But eventually he changed it, so when we looked at the HTML it was all encrypted in base 64 or hexadecimal, I can't remember which. Anyways, it was no feat to just decode it. But apparently only some of the students figured how to do it, and we did not tell anyone else. Eventually the tests got more and more obscure and complex to tackle. It eventually required learning about SQL injection, rainbow tables, hashing, all sorts of things to get at the answer, and not have to study for the dumb tests. We were all bamboozled. At the end of the year he went to the 5 of us that had managed to overcome every puzzle and not study a single day in any of his lessons, and said to us, "Work smarter, not harder. You all did splendidly to learn more than your peers." He ducking got us to do things way outside the scope of the class, and we learned quite a bit more than anyone else. Much like 95% of this thread, I'm not a teacher, but in one of my old college math classes, there was this Muslim girl who cheated on the final by having headphones and underneath her hijab and shirt, with the formulas and step-by-step procedures playing on her phone. Ducking brilliant. A girl in my electrical theory class did this, had Bluetooth earphones in under her hair. Unfortunately the Bluetooth wasn't connected when she started the playback, and her voice announcing test answers was played for the whole room to hear. Priceless. I am a teacher, but I'd actually like to brag on myself. In a high school government class, I couldn't make the time to study for an exam. I decided to go get a pack of those iron-on pages you could run through your printer, and added the entire study guide to graphic design that I applied to a colored t-shirt. I had my friend wear it to class the next day and sit in front of me. Profit.